For Fairy Eyes Only, Episode 11. Why didn't you tell us that right away? Zoe asked as he stood up. You did not ask, replied Trite, still seated. I also didn't ask to be flown here to hang out inside a cloud with a pointy-eared jerk. But here I am, Zoe shouted. Trite stood up too. But as a fairy, it didn't have the dramatic effect that he had intended. Zoe, just calm down, I said to him. They're trying to help us. They're the whole reason we're in this mess, Zoe said gruffly. How do we even know that we belong here? Zoe had made a pretty good point. It seemed that Reem was only interested in us because Daddy was. And she still hadn't shown us any evidence that either Zoe or I was a hero. For a moment, I thought that maybe everything was a mistake and that we might be able to end this all and go home. The thought didn't make me sad, but it didn't make me happy either. I believe we can answer that, said Deli from my shoulder. As she hopped onto the table in front of Trite, she spoke only to him. It's time to show them, she asserted. Trite's face told me that he wasn't thrilled about the idea. He wore the same expression that I had when my mum insisted that I do my homework right when I got home. I knew that she was right and that it wasn't her fault she was right, but still. Trite raised one of his neon pink wings and motioned some fairies over, using it like an arm. 4 fairies came flying in from the side of the courtyard opposite from where we entered. They were carrying a large, dark brown book. These fairies had on medieval-looking armour made from the same glass as the chair. The book they were carrying was thicker than a dictionary and wider. It was the kind of book that Zoe would have openly protested if we had been assigned to read it for our class. Zoe once proclaimed that making kids reading anything over 100 pages was technically illegal, but he never found the documents to support it. It also seemed that the book was heavier than it looked, since the fairies were out of breath by the time they put it down on the table. Trite shooed them away with his wing, and they disappeared straight up and out of the courtyard. When the fairies left, Zoe and I stood up at the same time to inspect. It was a dusty, run-down book. There were no words in the cover, but it was hard to say whether they had rubbed off or were just never there at all. Along the centre, a buckle with a lock ran horizontally across, made of the strange yellowish gold that I now knew. Stone gold? I asked. Yes, said Trite. Only a magic pen may write in the Book of Law. But it does not hurt to be safe. Why would anybody want to mess with the book? Asked Zoe. The Book of Law chronicles every fairy tale throughout history. Changing them would change the fate of the world, answered Trite indignantly. Zoe didn't respond this time. All 4 of us gathered closer, hovering over the book as Trite held up his shiny pen. Without a word, he turned it over, placed the crown on top inside the stone gold lock, and turned it. The buckle surrendered, opening up with a low hiss. I thought the pages smelled like pine trees, but didn't say it out loud. Trite began flipping through the book, and it was hard to see the words. Whenever I did catch a glimpse, the writing started off hard to focus on, but then got more clear. The words were written in fancy, old-looking letters. Zoe's face was getting closer and closer to the pages by the second. "It's in English," he said finally. "I thought it might be in a fairy or elvish, or something weird like that." Trite didn't look up to acknowledge Zoe, but it was obvious from his voice that he was agitated. "It is not in English. The fairy tales in the Book of Law appear in the first language of whomever is reading it," he said. "That's English," said Zoe, pointing at the book. "Zoe, to you it is in English, but to someone else it may be in French or German," said Deli. "If it was in French or German, I wouldn't be able to read it," Zoe explained politely. "But that's how I know it's in English." Trite let out an unfairy-like grunt and continued flipping through the pages while he spoke. The characters in these stories had their fates sealed by the outcomes written here. But Ream's first fairy tale is unique in its ending. "Ream was in a fairy tale?" I asked with surprise. "That seemed like a big deal to me." "Yes," Trite replied. "When a hero or heroine defeats a villain, their story and their fate are sealed within this book. Or the rival of those defeated, all of their magic is confined within the book so that they may never, ever use it against the world again. And every villain inside the Book of Law was defeated, save one." "Ream," I said gravely. "Yes," replied Ellie. "Instead of defeat, his fairy tale ended with an escape. That is why he was able to hold onto his vial. He was injured, pierced with stone gold, to be exact," Trite said as he slowed his page turning. "And once stone gold pierces you, it may never be removed or covered. That is why Ream always has a piece of stone gold visible, regardless of his disguise." "But nobody has explained yet why he's after us," said Zoe. "We didn't do anything to him." "You're not a patient child, are you, Zoe?" asked Trite in a half question. "And you don't own a bookmark," rebutted Zoe, not at all in the form of a question. Trite turned one last page, then covered it with his fairy hand, unleashing a slew of sparkles that shot out to conceal the center. "This is your fairy tale, and this is the reason that Ream is after you. It may be the last fairy tale ever written. All the fairy tales that came before it, and all the creatures inside of them are at stake. Ream and the forces of Ryle are trying to challenge their fate." "But why are you calling it mine?" I asked shyly. Deli looked up at me. "Because you are the hero," she replied. Trite moved his hand, and the sparkles flew away. Written on the page in 1,000 languages, but English to me, was the title, "The Boy and the Flying Bed," and underneath it there was a small drawing. It was the same one I had been drawing when I noticed a frog staring at me from behind a window. To be continued. Thank you for reading the story with me. I hope you enjoyed it. It's fun to know the history of fairy tales. Goodbye, and see you in the next video. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and comment down your favorite bit as well.